Hi knitters, welcome to episode 189 of the Knitty McPurly podcast. I'm your host, Devin Ventry. You can find me at KnittyMcPurly.com. I am Knitty McPurly on Instagram. And if you want to email me, I am Devin at KnittyMcPurly.com. Welcome to the podcast. Check out my Wisconsin mug. Isn't this so cute? This was sent to me by Colleen. Thanks, Colleen. Hi. Colleen may be a selfish knitter, but she is a very generous giver of non-knitted gifts. She's selfish knitter over on Instagram. How are you guys doing today? Oh my gosh, it is August. That's crazy talk. There's only 3 weeks until school starts. Oh my goodness. So last week with my family, we did the Ventry Family Week of Fun, which we planned at the beginning of the summer. And it was kind of a way to have like a little vacation that was half vacation, half staycation. And it was on a budget because we basically just took day trips every day of this week, Monday through Friday. My oldest daughter's going off to college, so we really wanted to do something fun with all of us. We went hiking in Madison. We went canoeing on the Shenandoah. We went to the movies, we saw Twisters. That was the only day we didn't take any pictures because we just went to the movies because we were exhausted from 2 days of hiking and canoeing. We went to Great Falls Park, which was fun, except that we had to drive, we were going with traffic because it's that direction, so we had to wait till after rush hour, and so it was super hot. Anyway, and then we went tubing on the Shenandoah again, and so it was quite the week. It was very busy and a lot of fun. I had a great time. But I'm glad it's over. Like, it was great. I had a wonderful time, but I'm also glad it's over. So check that box. All right, moving on to progress and shop news. Oh my gosh, this tea is so good. This is Bigelow's I Love Lemon. It's so good. I'm gonna like break out in a sweat here pretty soon because I am wearing my Diggory tee, by the way. What do you think? One of my kids stole my desk chair, so I'm sitting on a stool today, but whatever. Yeah, you can see this, this yarn needs a bit of a steam if I'm gonna pull it out of a drawer and just wear it. Otherwise it looks a little bit wrinkly, but whatever, it's all fine. This is a great t-shirt. I love the way it fits. I love the shape of it. And I have 2 of them. I could totally knit another one of these. I would knit it in Fiji if I were gonna knit another one. And I would probably do it with stripes. Wouldn't that be fun? I could use my leftovers from my Summer Vibe top / Jupiter crop. I do still have some leftovers. I wonder if it's enough to make a Diggory. Gosh, I'm glad we talked about this. Maybe I'll do that. I've been feeling very cast on-y lately. I got a comment from somebody on YouTube who said they had start-itis. I think it was Katie Bell, Gryffindor Chaser. Hi, Katie. I have start-itis too. Like, I just want to start stuff, but really I need to be finishing stuff or ripping it out and just abandoning it. One of those 2 things. Anyway, August color of the month is available in the shop. Here it is on Dubrovnik TK. You can get it in Frankfurt Fingering or Dubrovnik TK or as a sock set. As I showed you last week, Gigi and I both have knit socks out of it. It's so great. Where's my sock? I don't have the sock blockers up here. I'm gonna show this again in my little sock tutorial video. But this is Summer Lee's Little Checks pattern. And I just think it's so cute. It kind of snugs up. It's not been blocked yet. I stuck it on a sock blocker, but it ends up looking like kind of a ribbed sock before you block it. And you can see how giant my feet are. Anyway, August color of the month is in the shop. Also, color cards are here. If you want one of these, you can get those over in the shop. So this is how the color looks on a superwash base. So this is Frankfurt Fingering, Dubrovnik TK, Warsaw Worsted, and Berlin Bulky. This is going to be pretty accurate. It's going to be very similar on all the bases. The only one that's going to look more washed out and faded out is Fiji fingering, because that is just a very different fiber content in that yarn. And so it's gonna look a little bit different. Okay, so I told you I was gonna go do this road trip week, and I ended up driving a little bit, so I didn't get as much knitting time as I wanted to have. But I did work on my sweater, my make your own DIY sweater, which I'll talk about in the topic of the week. But I also was able to work a little bit on my second sock, so that was really nice. I did a little video showing when I use 3 16-inch circulars and when I use a 9-inch circular. So here is that. Since many of you asked me how to knit socks on 16-inch circulars, I thought that I would show you. You may recall I made this sock and started this one for Gigi like 2 years ago. And this is as far as I am, but basically we have half the stitches on one of the needles and the other half on the other needle. And then we're just going to take our third needle over here and continue. And I'm just going to knit across this needle, and then I'll have the stitches on this needle and I'll work with this one. People have mixed feelings on this. I've got this beautiful bag from Longleaf Bags here. Hi, Ray. Ray made that bag. And I'm just going to put it there to keep my needles from making that noise on the table. And all I'm going to do is knit across. But like I said, many of you have weighed in on this and you don't like the 3 needles, which is fine. We can agree to disagree. So when I am knitting like a vanilla sock like this, a sock that really is just plain, this is my favorite method. I love that there's no pulling like with Magic Loop. I love that my needle isn't so long with those big loops that get caught on things. That drives me crazy. However, if I am knitting a color work sock, I prefer a 9-inch circular, which I'm going to show you in just a moment. So here is my sock knitting using 3 16-inch circulars. Another reason this is great is that if you're doing a heel flap and gusset, you're going to have a lot of stitches on one needle, and it's nice to have the longer needle then. So again, Magic Loop would work. If you have double points, you're going to need 2 of them if you're doing a heel flap and gusset and you have all of those stitches. Now, in the case of a colorwork sock, such as this one, you can see I haven't actually blocked it yet. I had it on a sock blocker last week, so you saw how the colorwork looked all stretched out, but here it is pre-blocking. When you're working colorwork, my personal preference is a 9-inch circular because you have to make sure your floats are stretched far enough. So I keep this stretched tightly like that. Let me redo that. And then I will work my colors. Oops. It's hard to do these things when people are watching. I also haven't picked up this sock in a little bit. And then keep that pulled tightly so that your floats are nice and loose, because if you don't do that, your sock will not fit. Now, if you're using 3 16-inch circulars, I find it hard to turn the corner from one needle to the next. So by continually going around and around, I think it is easier to keep your floats nice and loose. How do you knit colorwork socks? All right, topic of the week. I got a little bit of work done on my DIY sweater, and I just want to show you, I steam blocked it, and I just want to show you how it looks right now, and then we'll talk about the next steps.
So here's the back side of our sweater. I am alternating from 2 different skeins, and here I have the back stitches placed on waste yarn, and you can see this is as far as I am. Here's our split hem, and here is the front side of our sweater. And here's the sweater from the front side. You can see the split hem. I have steam blocked it just a little bit so that it lays flat up here. And you can see all I did was decrease 2 stitches on each side. And now I am knitting straight up. And I have gone about 8, this is about 8 inches from the divide here. And I'm gonna go up another 2 inches to 10 inches here. And at that point, I'm going to place my markers to have my neckline here and to have my 2 fronts here.
So here's a little reminder of my measurements. I drew a picture of the sweater that I'm copying from my closet. If you're just jumping in on this topic and you have not been watching the past 2 episodes, go back and watch those where I introduce the topic of the DIY sweater. I got a sweater from my closet and I am trying to copy it and make it a knitted sweater. So basically, I am still working up the front. I did a little bit of armhole shaping, not very much, just to go in a little bit, and then I'm going straight up and I will go out again at the very top, just because the sweater that I'm copying has a very small amount of armhole shaping, and I could have left it off. That would have been fine, but it was super easy just to decrease 2 stitches on each side, knit up, and then increase those again. That was super easy to do, and I didn't mind doing it. So just as a reminder, my cast on, based on the measurement that I wanted and my gauge, is 132 stitches across the front and 132 stitches across the back. So when I looked at my schematic and I see that I want each shoulder to be 7 inches and the distance across the neck hole to be 8.75 inches, that worked out to 52 neck hole stitches and 42 stitches on each shoulder. But if you add 42 plus 52 plus 42, you get 136, which is more than I have. I have 132. Whatever, that's fine. So I thought, well, where do I want to make it a little bit smaller? Do I want a shorter shoulder? Because this is a drop shoulder sweater. Or do I want a slightly smaller neckline? And we're talking about 1/2 inch here. We're talking about 4 stitches. So I decided I'm gonna go ahead and take it in on the neckline because I don't want the neck to be too loose. Now, that said, I am gonna go around at the end and pick up stitches around the neck to knit a little bit of ribbing. And when you do that, you can change the neck hole. So even if I put the sweater on, once the front and the back are knit and I have stitched up the shoulders, once I've done that, if I put that on and the neck hole is way too big, that is an easy to fix problem because I can always tighten it up with my ribbing. I can pick up fewer stitches, knit it a little bit tighter and bring it in. Now, if it is too small, that is a different problem. I really have to rip back and fix it. But fixing something that's too big is easy to do. So, and that said, if it fits perfectly, I can pick up a very even number of stitches where I'm not gathering it at all and just knit a little bit of ribbing and it hopefully should still fit perfectly. Fingers crossed, that's what I'm hoping. So, once I do my few more stitches and I start to do my neck hole, this is the plan. So I'm going to use stitch markers to designate the stitches. So there'll be 42, 52, 42, 52 instead of the 50. How did I write this down? Oh, 48. Well, I'm reading the wrong place. So I had 52 stitches was how many I would need if I wanted to do the 8.75 inches across that's on my schematic. But I just said that doesn't add up right. It adds up to 136. So I'm going to take away from the neckline stitches, take it from 52 down to 48. So I'll have 42, 48, 42. So I'll mark that off, and then I am going to, in my middle 48 stitches, I will go in 12 and 12, and the middle 24 stitches I will bind off. So I'll have this bound off here, and then I will decrease 1 stitch per row in order to get the 24 stitches decreased here in 1.5 inches. One other thing that was not on my schematic that I had to go do to do this math was to check my row gauge. My row gauge is 8 rows equals 1 inch, which is a nice round number, so it was easy to figure out. So if I want to go from here to here, and this is 1.5 inches, and I decrease 12 stitches on each side, that'll give me exactly 1.5 inches to here, to this part where I'm going to start this triangle right there. So that will get me to right about here, and then I will work up here with short rows to get me the shoulder drop. That's a lot of words. It's a lot of information, but when I get there, I'll take pictures and I will show it to you so that you can see what I mean. Now I'm doing a round neck on mine because that's the kind of neck that my sweater has, and that's the kind that I like. If you wanted to do a V-neck, you'd start it lower, and rather than having a section where you bind off and then you do the stair steps, you're just going to start decreasing without that bind off, and you will get a V. Does that make sense? So you'll get, let's say I wanted to do a V-neck and I have my 48 middle stitches. Well, you'd put a stitch marker at 24 and 24, and then you would just decrease at whatever rate is the right rate for you based on your row gauge to get the V that you want. You'll have to do a little bit of math to figure that out. But the main difference between a V-neck and a round neck is you don't have that section of bound off stitches. So you need to start it up a little bit higher. It depends on what you want. It depends, like if you wanted a lower neck, you could bind off fewer stitches and then decrease at less of a rate if you wanted a lower round neck. Depends what you want. So you just have to think of the shape and what you need to do to get that shape. The most complicated part mentally is the short rows from here to here to make this triangle right here. But it's super easy to do. Like in terms of knitting, it's easy knitting, but you just have to think, how many short rows do I need to get the distance I want? Because if we look at my schematic, you'll see that the neckline drop, the distance between this top part here and the neckline is 3.5 inches. So that is the tippy top. And you also have to take into account the shoulder drop. We talked about this a little bit last time. Shoulder drop is the distance, like imagine if there's a triangle that's your shoulder and goes up and then straight across to the top part. That's called shoulder drop. If you don't account for that in your knitting pattern, you're going to have boxier shoulders, which is fine if that's what you're going for. I feel like I could leave the shoulder drop out of this particular design if I wanted to, but it's not hard to add it in just by adding a few short rows to make that this triangle right here, just to give it that slightly tailored look in what is otherwise kind of a boxy sweater. So I hope I said that well. I hope I said that in an understandable way. Yeah, okay. So I just drew this little picture super quick with the dotted lines showing what I'm going to be working next. So the long squiggly line at the top represents where the needles are now, where the stitch markers will go are marked, and then the dotted lines show what's going to happen next. Okay, now when I get to the back, just like with the Diggory tee, if you've knit this before, it's a similar construction. With the back, the neck is going to come up a little bit higher, and so I will bind off more stitches in that neckline along the back and then do fewer decreases and the same amount of short rows to get the shoulder drop. Okay, I'll probably work, like in the front I worked for 10 inches, in the back I'll probably do 11 and then do bind off more in the middle and then start my decreases. This is fun. I am really enjoying this. I loved reading your comments, which is a good segue into the comments section. I loved reading your comments. Many of you have said that you're excited about this process and that it has made you get that thing out of your closet that fits you the best, that you love the most, and think, can I make this? Could I knit this? I bet I could. Amy Spar says, hi, Amy. Hi, Devin. Oh, the socks are so good. And I loved the Ferrari jacket too. Gigi is so adventurous with her knitting, out there doing the hard things. That's one thing about youth. I think they're just not afraid. You know, when the older you get, the more fear of failure I think most people have. Some people are more adventurous naturally than others, but I think young people are less afraid of failure, which is nice. She said, Amy Herzog retired from her knitting business quite a few years ago. She's such an intelligent and timeless designer. I took a class on sweater construction from her, gosh, probably 10 years ago. It helped me to learn the skills. I gotta bring this closer, I'm sorry. I wanna sit here, but I can't read it. It helped me to learn the skills to do what you were suggesting and design my own sweaters. Using garments already in my wardrobe is a great starting point for getting the fit and style that I like. It's awesome that you're sharing the thought process with all of us. For those out there who are not quite ready to make the create my own sweater leap, modifying a sweater pattern to your liking is a good starting point. I encourage people to go rogue, go off pattern, and make that sweater the way that will flatter you. And if it doesn't work out, it's only knitting, and we love knitting, right? One thing I wanted to say about the book that I showed last week, the Amy Herzog book, Knit to Flatter, I think it was called. I didn't bring it up here with me, but most of the book is about tricking the eye, knitting something that is a shape that will suit your body shape. Like, you know, if you have broader shoulders or if you have a broader midsection, how to minimize it. That's most of the book. At the very end of the book, there's like 3 pages on shaping to accommodate things. And while I appreciated it, I felt that she both didn't go into enough detail on important shaping, like bust shaping. That's a very important part of shaping. But she did encourage things like whatever you have, shape for it. If your butt sticks out a little bit, add shaping for that. If your belly sticks out a little bit, add shaping for that. And I thought, that's too much. Like, you wouldn't want to do bust shaping and belly shaping and then come in for the width. Like, it just, in my humble opinion, I didn't agree with her idea to shape for everything. And maybe she wasn't really advocating for that. Maybe what she was saying is, if you want to shape for something, you can. And to give some guidance in that, if you want to do that. But if you want shaping, like if you need more space in the bust and more space in the belly, straight up and down will always work. You don't need to. You can just whoop. I'm a big fan of the straight up and down shaping. That said, I'm a pretty straight up and down person, but you know, adding a little bit more volume is always an option too. Okay, Amy said, I love your suggestion for 3 16-inch circulars for socks, but I mostly use Magic Loop. I love the Chow-Goo interchangeables, me too, absolutely. I have a narrow ankle, heel, and toe, but a wide arch and calf. I end up changing needle size a couple times throughout the project so my socks fit properly, and interchangeables are perfect for that. That is a good point. Mandy says, hi Devin, I love your podcast. Your children are lovely too. I wanted to drop a note regarding the sweater project. 2 weeks ago, when you mentioned doing this, I was so pumped. I had a sweater's quantity of yarn in stash with no project in mind, so I thought this would be perfect. I have a lounging sweatshirt style top in my wardrobe that I wear fall, winter, and spring. If it's clean, I'm wearing it. Oh, it is so comfy and slouchy and oversized and yummy. Unfortunately, it's pretty ragged from the constant wear, not to mention a little snip tear in the front from sewing. Oops. Anywho, I pulled it out and got started. I drew a picture and took all the measurements. Yay, Mandy, I'm so excited for you. Then I made 2 swatches for the perfect fabric drape. I did the math and then cast on, and all is well. I'm especially looking forward to creating the V in the front shaping of the neck because I'm clueless. Let me know, Mandy, if you need any help. Sure, I could copy someone else's designs, but I want this to be my own. I've wanted to design a sweater for a very long time, but never had the nerve before. There are no yarn shops in town, only a Hobby Lobby, so I order all of my nice yarn online. The only knitter I know is my mom, who's 91 and doesn't knit sweaters anymore, only hats. So with that said, I don't have a group of ladies spurring me on, LOL. Thanks for giving me the confidence and the push I needed to do this. I've been knitting for about 57 years, so it's about time, right? Oh my gosh, this comment made my day. Like, this comment is why I do all of this. It was like such a pat on the back for me to hear that I gave somebody the encouragement and inspiration to do something they've always wanted to do. What could possibly be better than that? Thank you so much, Mandy, for that comment, and I can't wait to hear how your sweater is going. Pam Knits Too, hi Pam, says, way to go, Gigi, making those socks. I am super into Summerlee's socks, and I'm working on her Mermaid Avenue socks right now. Me too. She is such a great sock designer. I love magic loop, and I can't imagine using DPNs. I don't mind pulling the loop. Using 3 16-inch circulars seems too bulky and cumbersome. I would definitely lose one. When you use magic loop, you always have a needle to use all the time. This is true, absolutely. Chowgu needles have the best wire. I completely agree. I have knit 3 sweaters, but none of them fit well, which was very disappointing because I spent a great deal of money on the yarn, not to mention the time spent knitting it. Thus, I don't have much ambition to try another sweater. So 2 things, Pam. You could pull them out, and that is a bummer in the sense that you did spend all the time knitting them, but if you're not happy and you're not going to wear them, then, you know, why keep the yarn in there? And it is a bummer to pull them out, but you could kind of make a ripping party and just, you know, reball them up and think about knitting something else with them if you want. I almost never do that. It's good advice, I think, but I almost never do it. Another thing is to think, what is it you don't like about them? Why didn't they fit well? Was it a pattern problem or a gauge problem or a style problem? I don't know. I would love to hear more about that. B says, hi Devin, this series about knitting an item in your closet is just what I have been looking for. Yes. I'm kind of over buying patterns. I want to support pattern designers, but trying to determine what patterns will look like or fit right is frustrating. I know what I like, and it's probably already in my closet. I am all about the yarn, LOL. Awesome. No, I totally get it. And I think it's good to pick patterns by designers that have a similar body shape to you. You know, everything looks great on Andrea Mowry, everything. And she wears some crazy things, like those barrel jeans. My daughter just told me that they're called barrel jeans. I don't get this style. I mean, it looks good on nobody except for Andrea Mowry, who looks good in anything. You could put anything on her and she would look good in it. So, you know, it's hard to tell when someone doesn't have a body shape that's similar to yours. Although one good thing about Ravelry is that you can browse through other people's knits. And if you see someone else who's knitted and you can read their comments and modifications and whatnot, that can be helpful too. So Doggles says, I'm swooning over your red sweater. The twisted rib is gorgeous. I've never tried it, but I am itching to try it now. Great podcast. Awesome. I hope you do. Jean says, Gigi, rocking it. Socks are a good thing. The Indian Lake Artisans needles are good. They are made in Michigan. And Katie Bell, Gryffindor Chaser, also said, Indian Lake Artisan are ergonomic hexagonal needles. They are handmade in Michigan by a husband and wife team. It takes between 1 and 3 months to arrive after ordering them. I love them. So I looked at these, and you're right, they are very expensive. I have tried hexagonal needles before, And I'll talk about that in a minute because the rest of Katie's comment is about Carson Deur's and his recommendation of hexagonal needles. Anyway, these are very expensive needles. I think I would be willing to buy one if it was a size I used a lot. Like maybe, and they don't have size 1s, probably because they're too thin. They don't have size 1s, and that's what I always use for socks. So I don't know. I don't know if I would try it. They are very expensive. Okay. Lisa says, I've wanted to buy some of your yarn, and this new August yarn is the perfect one for my first order. August is my birthday month, so I'm going to order this for myself in August. So excited. Yay, Lisa. Awesome. I hope you love it. Awesome. Christina says, hi, Devin. Great episode. I am traveling to St. Kitts at the end of August, and I want to bring knitting. I have orders in for wood needles. Thank you for your timely info. I have been toying with the idea of designing my own sweater. I even bought twice a sweater design book. Did you buy the same book twice? Oh gosh, I've done that before. Maybe that will come to St. Kitts too. Gigi was so cute whipping that second sock out. I was impressed too. Second sock syndrome is real. Great. I'm so glad people know to travel with wooden needles. Again, I have traveled throughout the US with metal needles and not had any trouble. I think most people have had that experience. But if you are traveling internationally, just play it safe and go with wooden needles because you don't want those things to be confiscated. Ruth says, I love toe-up socks. You can try them on as you go. That is true, Ruth. You can also try on cuff-down socks, especially if you knit with 3 16-inch circulars. Or if you're working magic loop too, and you have a really long needle, you'll be able to get your foot in there. The reason I don't love toe-up socks is the bind off. You really have to work a specific kind of stretchy bind off so that it doesn't flare. It's very easy to get a flared bind off or a too tight bind off. Neither of those things are desirable. You need a bind off that looks like that German twisted cast on that's nice and tight but very stretchy. And they exist. I'm not saying they don't exist, but you have to do a specific kind of bind off. There's a couple different ones, you know, you could pick. Anyway, this was a good comment from Kat Tardiff. Flexi flips come in 2 lengths, so you can get longer ones if you like. One end of a flexi flip has a turbo blunt tip, and the other end has the rocket sharp lace tip. I love that I get to choose what I need at the moment. The blunt tips are perfect for splitty yarns. Flexi flip sets come in metal and bamboo. I've tried both. Nice to have options. That is super helpful because I've had the flexi flips for a long time and I didn't realize they had 2 different tips. I even looked at them this week because someone commented on this last week and I was like, really? And I looked at them like they look the same, but I wasn't looking at the tip. I was looking at the length. I thought maybe one was shorter than the other and they're not. So it's the tip that's different. Interesting. I also didn't know they come in 2 lengths or that you could get them in bamboo. I think when I got mine, they had just come out and maybe at that point they didn't have all those options. I don't know. Stitches and Prayers says, honestly, when it comes to the shirt I reach for most, it's my diggory. I've been thinking of making another in wool. My first is in linen and making it with long sleeves. You totally could. You totally could pick up sleeves and knit those out from here. Absolutely, rather than just doing the cuff. I love the diggory too. It's such a basic shirt. And my response to her was I actually based the design of this off a t-shirt in my closet that I love because it just fits great. I hope you love it too. Ann Cave says, Gigi socks are wonderful. I'm interested in how they look so different. Did she alternate skeins or how did she do it? No, she only had 1 skein. I think it's just a matter of it being hand-dyed yarn and different parts of it are different, but also definitely her gauge. Her second sock was knit much, much tighter than the first one. I think she just got comfortable with the sock knitting and she was using, what did she use? I think she used DPNs, I'm pretty sure she used DPNs. But they came out great. I still cannot believe she did that. That was shocking to me. I loved it. Okay, so here is Katie's comment about the Indian Lake Artisan hexagonal needles, and she talks about Carson Deur's, and I want to add to that a little bit. Katie said, I learned about the Indian Lake Artisan needles in a class on ergonomics for knitting from Carson Deur's. I am a registered nurse and cannot recommend his book strongly enough. If you ever have the chance to take a class from him, leap on it. He knows his stuff and he's a good teacher and a lot of fun. Pre-COVID, I was lucky enough and smart enough, along with my sister, to take every class he offered at Stitches West over a 3-year period. My sister and I took 1 class per year when we went to Stitches and started with a short class, learning how to sit in a chair to understand how to support your back. He showed us his magic butt trick for sitting in a chair. Apparently, it was a former student that gave it that name, and ended up taking his 8-hour class on swatchbuckling, advanced ergonomics if he teaches it on the West Coast where I am, but I prefer the swatchbuckling name. I took the 8-hour class in spite of the fact that it meant I had almost no time for the marketplace and almost could not shop at Stitches. Only an hour of the class was lunch break. I completely relearned, slowly retaught myself how to tension my yarn differently on my fingers to stop having wrist pain from knitting based on what I learned from him. I also used the in-depth physiology he talked about to understand how to prevent pain from mousing and keyboarding. Lifesaver for letting me knit more without hurting. So that is super interesting, Katie. I too have taken Carson's class, just one. I think it was a 3-hour class back in 2018, which is I think the year that his book came out. The book is very expensive, or at least it was. Maybe they're in the used market now. But when it first came out, it was like $50 for the book. And it's so funny because when I took the class, I felt like I came away with 2 main points. Sit at 90 degrees, like basically keep your, sit at 90 degrees, hold your arms at 90 degrees. You don't want to be, any kind of scrunching is bad. You want to be, easy and comfortable and keeping everything at either 90 or 180 degrees. And also, if you're using slippery needles and slippery yarn, you're going to have to struggle, and that struggle is going to cause you to hurt. At the same time, if you use grippy yarn and grippy needles, that's not a good match either. Again, you're going to have to struggle, and that is going to cause pain. So those things I felt were helpful. I personally am a big fan of physical fitness and weightlifting and exercise. I do a lot of exercise, and I feel like that more than anything else that I do. Hi, you're interrupting, right?
I know, I have to get changed because V-Dub's here.
Oh, all right. So. I feel like that more than anything else is going to keep you knitting healthy and not get injured. All right, that was my husband. So after my husband so rudely interrupted, I found one of my Flexi Flips. Look, those tips are the same. Is this a Flexi Flip? Is that what this is? It is, right? I'm almost 100% sure. But those tips are the same. They are not different. They're identical. Did I get gypped? I don't know. All right, moving right along to knitting fantasies. All of today's knitting fantasies, which if you're new to the podcast, knitting fantasies is the part where we pick out amazing patterns that we could all go download at any time that we wish we could knit if we had time. Like if we could knit everything in the whole world, what would we knit? So today's picks all come from Purl Soho. The great thing about Purl Soho is they sell yarn, and that is their main business. So they design all of these free patterns using their yarn so that you can get the free pattern and then go buy the yarn from them. You can do that if you want to, or you can use whatever's in your stash or whatever independent yarn dyer you might love the most. You can use any yarn you want, essentially. So my first is a free pattern called the Good Morning Blanket. How cute is this? It's a log cabin style blanket using a light worsted / DK yarn in garter stitch. Super simple, so both modern and retro at the same time. It comes in you could do it either as a crib size or as a small throw. I just love it. It would be so simple to do and just such a beautiful outcome. My second pick is really a cool one. It's the All Roads hat and mittens, and these are knit flat. Hats and mittens are typically knit in the round because it is a round thing. It's very easy to knit it in the round. But because it is knit flat, the stitches go the other way and it just looks so cool. I just think these are so pretty. It uses garter stitch and is shaped with short rows, and this pattern also uses a light worsted / DK. And if you go to the pattern, which I'll have the links down below, if you go to the pattern, it'll take you to the yarn that they recommend, and you can use that or you can use whatever else you want. All right, so here's what happened. This is the part of the show where we share our oral tradition. It's the knitting story part of the show. If you have a knitting story, send it to me, Devin at KnittyMcPurly.com. If you have a heartwarming, heartbreaking, hilarious, ridiculous, whatever knitting story, it can just be a regular story about something that happened. Whatever it is, I would love to share it on the podcast. Today's story comes from Rachel. Rachel has submitted several stories, and she's such a prolific knitter that I think she just ends up with a lot of stories, and she's also willing to send them to me. So thank you so much, Rachel, for that. I really, really appreciate it. One of the things she talks about in the story is the Williamsburg cowl, and the light in here right now is so great for seeing the cables and the bobbles of this cowl. The Williamsburg cowl is a cowl that I designed a couple years ago, and it was for a collaboration that I don't even really remember anymore. But this is a great little pattern. The thing I love about it, in addition to the fact that it lays really nicely, I have 2 of these and I wear them a lot in weather that's appropriate for it. It's lightweight because it's a fingering weight pattern and only takes 1 skein. And it's very easy to wear and it's fun to make because of the cables and the bobbles, and it's just so pretty. Rachel agrees with me. She says, so here's what happened Sunday. So this is something that just happened, but first, the backstory. In November of 2023, I purchased your Williamsburg cowl design after seeing you wear it on a podcast episode and falling in love with it. I cast on for the first time in January and quickly became obsessed with the knit. I really want to make another one now that we're talking about it. Oh, this is so nice. The pattern was so well written, and the 2 charts meant I wouldn't get lost in the accompanying pattern written instructions. I enjoyed the process so much that I have cast on for the cowl another 13 times. Wow, she is a very prolific knitter. Oh my gosh. One of my attempts was sadly destroyed by the 2 golden retriever puppies we welcomed into our home in February. But 12 attempts were successfully completed, with almost all of them having been gifted or waiting to be gifted. Well, it was the 13th one, right? You know what they say. Oh, never mind. I finished cowl number 13 this past Sunday and immediately wound the yarn and cast on for number 14 without looking at the pattern, as surely I have the first part memorized after 13 cowls, right? I spent most of the day working the 20 rounds of cuff ribbing I decided to do because I like the ribbing to be a bit longer than the 1.5 inches the pattern calls for. I was jazzed to finally make it to the setup row where you place your markers. To my absolute horror, I came to the end of the round and was 8 stitches short. I had a flashback to the fading point wrap I started earlier in the spring, for which I missed an entire lace repeat and knit the whole first half with 139 stitches instead of 171 stitches. You'd think I would have learned to always glance over the pattern before casting on, no matter how many times I've knit it, but alas, apparently not. So it was with no small amount of sadness that I pulled my needles out of my false start and proceeded to rip out a whole day of progress. As I was frogging, I decided I was very glad that I am a process knitter and not a product knitter, as this silly mistake would have thoroughly wrecked me. I let the yarn marinate in the naughty corner for the rest of the day and picked up a shawl instead, and that is where it belonged. Any yarn that does that to you deserves a minimum of 1 day in the naughty corner. I would suggest maybe several months, but like I said, Rachel gets a lot done. Williamsburg cowl number 14 was cast on again in the wee hours of Monday morning and is going swimmingly so far. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Always, always, always read your pattern, no matter how many times you have knitted. In case you were wondering, I also learned to always put my knitting out of reach of our two golden criminals. Oh my gosh, they are adorable. And I don't know much about dogs, but I think golden retrievers are kind of busy, aren't they? Like 2 golden retriever puppies, I think is a lot of work. My dog is the world's laziest dog, and he's not a lot of work at all. He's the easiest, sweetest, most wonderful dog ever. And that said, busy dogs are wonderful too. All dogs are great. I love dogs. They're so great. But these 2 are just adorable. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful, I almost said Sunday, a wonderful Saturday. Maybe it's Sunday if you're watching on Sunday. And I will see you back here next week. Bye, knitters.